This video is brought to you by Ekster Wallets, who's offering a discount for any viewers who click the link in the description. Ekster Wallets are a company currently leading in the smart wallet business. I wouldn't have imagined myself doing a promotion not related to computers in some way or another, but I thought this one was pretty cool. As the name suggests, it's a modern day wallet. I've had a couple of bulky ones over the last couple of years that get the job done, but this one is really sleek and fits easily into any pocket you choose. Also having this neat card slot that shoots the cards out by pulling the trigger, while also making sure that they don't fall out whatsoever. On the inside, there's a strap you can use to store bills, and you can fit a plethora of other cards in there as well. The most important thing with these wallets is the tracker. By placing this solar-powered tracking device in the wallet, you can find the location of your wallet at any time via a Bluetooth connection with your phone. This is what spoke to me the most, because a few months back I had a really bad moment at a store where I lost my wallet and couldn't find it, and at a time like that, a tracking ability would have been very handy to say the least. Like I said, it's Ekster Wallets, and you can find the link and discount code in the description below. Having said all that, let's get on with the show. Last time I said there would be a Sonic Chronicles video. Sorry to say, but it's cancelled. I played the game for an hour and realized that I wanted nothing to do with it and promptly turned it off. I don't know anything about what makes a good RPG, nor am I particularly curious to find out. Whatever the answer is, Sonic Chronicles is probably the exact opposite. I was getting really frustrated with the combat, the soundtrack was grating my ears, the graphics were awful, the opening cutscene would make Johnny Test blush, and my eyes were glazing over for the entire time I played it. There would be no point in putting over 10 hours into a game I could sum up in a half a paragraph, which is exactly what I just did. Because of Chronicles sucking, we probably won't get a Sonic RPG again for the reasons I laid out in the Sonic Shuffle video, which is a massive shame because it could have been interesting. And in fact, the story had me engaged when I was a kid, because yeah, I almost beat this game when it came out. The game includes the characters from Gun, it expands upon the Gizoid lore from Sonic Battle, tying that into the Echidna research that Gerald Robotnik had done as established in Sonic Adventure 2 and Shadow the Hedgehog. Really, all the pieces were there, but the game just sucks. Apparently, there's also drama behind the story too, with lawsuits and such, so let's just promptly forget this one and jump right into the topic for today's video. Looking back at the 2000s, it's interesting to see how on top PlayStation was when they first started. The PlayStation was the hit nobody saw coming, and a sea of other garbage consoles history is left behind. Today, PlayStation is synonymous with gaming. That popularity stayed strong with the PlayStation 2, one of my favorite, if not my number one favorite console ever made. To this day, the PlayStation 2 remains the most successful game console ever released, although I doubt it will stay that way. I mean, the Switch doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. But back on subject, the handheld market was pretty much always Nintendo's domain, but in the mid-2000s, I certainly don't fault Sony for trying to get in on it. Enter the PlayStation Portable. A moderate success at the end of the day, but when your competition is the Nintendo DS, you're just going to get smoked. Similar to how the Sega Game Gear did when compared to Nintendo's Game Boy in the early 90s. For Sega, they still felt the need to have Sonic on the PSP even though the DS was more popular. The PSP received Sonic via a Genesis compilation, and most importantly, the two exclusives, Sonic Rivals and Sonic Rivals 2. I have a lot of nostalgia for these two games, Sonic Rivals 2 being the reason I wanted the PSP as a kid. Although I still got a lot of playtime out of Daxter, Ratchet & Clank 5, and the Family Guy episode the console came with. I put that in expecting there to be a video game, but I was left with nothing to show for it by having spent 22 minutes watching Family Guy as an 8-year-old. Anyway, I think the PSP had a pretty decent library, including games I got into when I was older like Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops and Peace Walker, as well as Mega Man Maverick Hunter X. I no longer own a PSP, but I plan on buying one for the hell of it one of these days, because a complete PlayStation console collection would be pretty cool. I already have the fat and slim PS2s, a fat and super slim PS3, the regular PS4, and I do own a PlayStation Vita. Wow, this thing is dusty. Recently, my uncle made me the custodian of his old PS1 and his games, which I got to add to my existing PS1 library, so I could scratch that one off the list. I really did buy a PlayStation TV back in 2016, thinking I was going to use it for PSP and Vita games footage. But then this thing isn't compatible with most Vita games without hacks anyway, and emulation is a thing for PSP. What a fool I was. Back to Sonic. When I was a kid, I knew I needed a PSP after the first trailer for Sonic Rivals 2 dropped. It was one of the most exciting trailers I had ever seen. Let's take a look. Yeah, that wasn't as good as I remembered. In fact, it was pretty lame. I mean, I remember this being a really hype trailer, and yet it's just PNGs flying across the screen. Made me laugh to look back on. But I suppose that could be the thesis of the whole video. The Rivals series is one I played a lot of as a kid, but I really haven't played much of them since then. Coming back to them now, it's really nothing special, but I'm glad to talk about them at the very least. In fact, I added them back into my collection last year just so I could display them on my shelf, and it was then that I noticed something quite cursed about Rivals 1. The character renders on the front of the box are just the PNGs from the game's artwork, which is fine, but they gave Knuckles this flaming punch attack, and you can see Shadow looking at it, but that's not how the artwork looks. Someone took this Shadow and photoshopped his eye to look at the fire, so now I see this cover and can only think of derpy YouTube thumbnails. Now that we're in the game, let's just start by saying, if you were to look up the definition of bland in the dictionary, you've got Sonic Rivals 1 and 2. To be fair, Sonic Rivals 2 demonstrates improvements over the first one, like higher production values and double the playable characters. Well, Metal Sonic technically was in Rivals 1, but now he's here by default in the sequel. Rivals 2 also has more gameplay modes to sink your teeth into, like battle modes, my favorite of which being Capture the Chow, because Capture the Flag was my favorite game in gym class as a kid. But back on subject, the sequel also has overall better level design, but it's all in service of a formula that's heavily flawed from the word go. But I wish to start with the good stuff. Visually, while the models and textures look absolutely terrible, I think the aesthetics of the games are pretty cool. I just mean that there are a lot of new level themes in these games. In Rivals 1, right after the typical opening in Forest Falls, you get Colosseum Highway, a Roman Empire-themed Sonic stage. Later in the game, you play through Death Yard Zone, a Junkyard-themed Sonic stage. These two kind of make up for the rest being pretty typical. Rivals 2 has some interesting locations with Blue Coast, Frontier Canyon, and Mystic Haunt, and Sunset Forest reminded me of Sunset Hill Zone from Sonic Advance 3. On the note of visuals, I alluded to this earlier, but I didn't use my PS TV for these games. I did for this 30 FPS clip on the screen right now, but my main footage for Rivals 1 and 2 was on the PSP emulator, which I used to not get good performance out of, but I got to work for this video, even with a 60 FPS patch. Although for whatever reason, the game is really bright, leading to you barely being able to see some of the backgrounds, especially in a zone like Crystal Mountain. The music in these games is often slept on, and I get that it's because it's mostly a bunch of background noise, but there are winners here like both main acts of Blue Coast and Rivals 2.
The race is getting rough, but I just won't give up. The competition's getting really tough. Not gonna happen, 'cause I'm not stopping.
And in general, the kind of background noise provided by much of the music in Rivals 1 is exactly what I can dig when doing projects and stuff. My only complaint then being that the loops are some of the shortest in the series, hurting a track like Race to Win from Rivals 2 especially. Rivals 2 increased the production values like I said, and by that I mean we get fully voiced cutscenes with the 4 kids cast. My favorite voices for the characters, for the most part. However, this is in service of a nonsensical story. This goes for both games, the plot is laughable. But let's start with the basics. In Rivals 1, Eggman Nega has come back from the future to use his machine that turns everything into a card, and he's going to use it to turn the planet into a card. Like, that's the story of the game. Silver's back to stop him, Sonic needs to rescue the Tails and Amy cards, Knuckles needs to rescue the Master Emerald card, and Shadow's trying to investigate the situation as well. Eggman Nega's motivation to turn the world into a card might be the dumbest villain plot in the history of Sonic, because what would Step 2 even be? Now there's no world to conquer.
Fine, I'll pull the trigger then. Turbo, fools! Yes, I won!
In Rivals 2, there are 4 campaigns like the first game, but now the 4 characters from Rivals 1, Sonic, Shadow, Silver, and Knuckles, are partnered up with another character. Sonic with Tails, Shadow with Metal Sonic, Silver with Espio, and Knuckles with Rouge. Here, I'll also give the game credit. I think these are interesting combos. Silver already was friends with Blaze in 06, so that would be an obvious tag team. Shadow and Rouge are friends, so that would be obvious, but instead, Rouge is with Knuckles, 2 characters that have always been butting heads. Silver has to make a connection with Espio, who in his modern incarnation has never been seen without the Chaotix, and Shadow having to work with Metal Sonic, who demonstrates by the end that he's still somewhat sentient even after the events of Sonic Heroes. The plot of Rivals 2 isn't nearly as nonsensical as the first game. This time, Eggman Nega is now trying to open a door to the future to release the Ifrit monster, not to be confused with the one from Secret Rings. The 4 playthroughs also mixing together in a more interesting way than Rivals 1, like how Nega is the mysterious client Rouge has been hired by to collect the Chaos Emeralds, and how Metal Sonic was carrying the 7th Emerald explaining why the portal opens despite there being only 6 collected emeralds. With Silver's story focusing on his effort to save the Chow from Eggman Nega and explaining how that's connected. In both games, it's kind of funny to see how Sonic never even realizes he's fighting Eggman Nega, because when Sonic or Knuckles are around, he's just pretending to be Eggman, albeit without a pink nose. Now that's cursed. But not like it really matters. The plot twist of it being Eggman Nega doesn't even really make a difference, just like Rush. So it's just needless drama for the sake of it. Which results in laughable cutscenes like when Shadow finds out it's Eggman Nega. You could use this as another example of how in the 2000s, Sonic as a character was really losing a lot of importance in his own series. I mean, just look at how Sonic 06 made him the character the least connected to the main story, and now the Rivals games have made it so he doesn't even know what the story even is. I can't say this bothered me, but I do feel like this could have become a serious problem if it continued on in the games. Anyway, the subject of Eggman Nega also brings another series-wide issue into light. This character was established in Sonic Rush to be the alternate dimension version of Eggman from Blaze's world. In Sonic Rivals, he's here from the future like Silver, and like Blaze in Sonic 06. Hard to say what was really going on here, considering the fact that apparently 06 was meant to take place before Rush, but this concept never materialized in the story. Since then, it's now believed that Nega went from the future to Blaze's dimension. I guess that can work, but it's a mess. On my Sonic timeline, I placed Rush as before Rivals because Eggman Nega in Rivals hates Eggman for having such a history of failure tainting his work even in the future, when the two work together in Rush. But if Eggman's incompetence hurts Nega in the future, that would already have been the case by his traveling to Blaze's dimension in Sonic Rush. See, headcanon is pretty much the only thing that can make sense of this mess. On that note, I think Nega being from the future makes more sense than being from another dimension, since like I said in the last video, Blaze isn't a full alt-dimension Sonic, she's just the hero of that world. Nega literally being Eggman reversed doesn't really match that well with that, in my opinion. Although on the subject of Silver, if you remember, he debuted in Sonic 06, but the plot of that game caused the timeline to reset where the story never happened. Silver is still from the future, with Sonic Rivals being his first appearance in the new timeline. What's weird about this is that Silver has appeared in Sonic Generations and Sonic Forces, but Sonic Rivals never released in Japan despite Iizuka working on them. So is Rivals canon? The plot is nonsense like I said, but it's still the only way for Silver to exist in the new timeline, so I have it on my timeline. If the new book coming out explains the lore of Sonic, which I hope it does, they could say that the Time Eater in Generations pulled Silver from Timeline A into Timeline B if Rivals isn't canon, but I have no reason to think it isn't at this point. Although I really like Silver still. Silver made a pretty bad first impression in Sonic 06, but if you play that game all the way through, you see how Silver really is a nice character, and I think Rivals also highlights that a lot, paving the way for his appearances in the Archie and IDW books. But anyway, the plots in these games also don't work because it relies on that weird thing Sonic plots love doing, where the characters just fight each other for no reason when all of their goals align.
Eggman, you're behind a Master Emerald missing. Looking for this? It's a cart? That doesn't make any sense, I'm confused. Eggman, it's your fault! What did I do?
Which is what makes this scene between Silver and Knuckles really funny to me.
Silver, what are you doing here? Hey, what's with getting in my face?
I need those chow. It's important that I have them. Now move aside.
Help yourself. I need to collect some rings to fuel this emerald detector.
Okay. Thanks.
Silver is shocked that we're not gonna fight for once. I also really like this scene between Shadow and Rouge, because it's just really stupid.
Hey, Rouge. I hear you've collected some Chaos Emeralds with that handy contraption of yours.
Good news travels fast.
I can't tell you why, but I need to know how many you found. It's really important.
If it's so important, maybe you should let me in on the secret. You can trust me, really.
Fine. The truth is, someone is trying to unleash the Ifrit into our world from another dimension. The key to opening the portal to that other dimension is the 7 Chaos Emeralds.
I see. Well, I'm certain the person that hired me to collect the emeralds will protect them.
Who hired you?
That's strictly confidential.
Come back here!
Now that Sonic trope is dumb, but it's even dumber when it's the main concept of the game. In the Rivals series, you play as whichever character you want, and in each level they race to the goal with another character. I honestly can't tell if the flaws with Rivals 1 and 2 are because of this gimmick, or the gimmick hides the real problem. As previously mentioned, these games are really dull to play. The level designers try to make it interesting since you have to take the highest routes you can find in order to get the upper hand in the race, which plays on established 2D Sonic level design tropes really well, but what you're playing isn't that fun. Starting with how every character plays the exact same. All characters run at the same speed, can homing attack enemies as well as spin dash. So that means Knuckles can't glide and climb walls, Silver can't hover, Sonic doesn't run faster, and so on. In older videos, I've said that Sonic 4 Episode 2 was going to be Tails' first playable appearance in a 2D game since Advance 3, and when making that statement, I completely forgot about Rivals 2, and that's because he doesn't really play like Tails here because every character is the same. I get that this was done because otherwise the game's balance would be completely out of whack if certain characters had a blatant advantage over others, but that's why having all the characters race as the main gimmick of the game was not a good idea. The only difference the characters have between one another is their special move. Sonic boosting forward, Knuckles stunning the opponent, Shadow slowing them down with Chaos Control, and Silver screwing up their controls with Psychic Control. And Metal Sonic copying whoever he's racing against, which is a cool detail. Rivals 2 giving Tails the ability to fly for a short period of time, Rouge sending bombs after her enemies, and Espio going invisible and thus going through obstacles. In Rivals 1, the special mechanic was broken since Knuckles, Shadow, and Silver all have to stop in place for a few frames to do their attacks, while Sonic just boosted forward. A massive advantage granted for Sonic. Rivals 2 fixing this by making it so that specials don't stop your forward momentum. Specials are also built up via rings in Rivals 2, when in the first game you'd have to find a special star ring amongst the other items, thus also giving the magnetized rings power more use since it builds up your special gauge. Most of the other items stayed consistent with the first game. If you're in second place, you use items offensively, like sending a fireball after your enemy or snow that will freeze them. If you're in first place, then you get to use items defensively, like a flame shield or leaving behind a frozen patch on the ground to freeze the other player when they come across it. Rivals 2 improving the level design by having less segments like this, where you get punished for being in first place by allowing the rival to easily catch up and hit you when you're trying to move this block. But the game also still has plenty of segments where you aren't really doing anything but watching something happen. Maybe you might have to mash buttons at best. Segments that are frequent in both games. They did try breaking up the monotony in the sequel by having special missions where you do tasks other than racing, like collecting Chow or bashing badniks in Neon Palace Act 1. But even with the improvements the game does make, it still can't save the Rivals formula. Every stage basically amounts to mindlessly running forward and getting carried by dash pads. The worst trope of 2D Sonic. Physics are almost at Sonic 4 levels, thus necessitating the dash pads. This goes for each and every stage, making it so that Rivals is just a boring game. But it can also be pretty frustrating because when you lose a stage due to rubber banding AI or getting blasted with items, you'll have to do the stage again when it wasn't really that fun in the first place. The sequel tries to mix it up with rival battles in between Acts 1 and 2, but by my third playthrough I just felt like it dragged the pace to a crawl rather than mixing the game up. The bosses are all lame as well. You'd think having another character trying to beat the boss before you would increase the challenge, but the AI just gets its ass kicked in bosses while I steamroll them all. Except Sunset Forest, where I ended up spending a long time on this in most of the runs because the boss would just change patterns mid-cycle and the rival would get in my way. Each campaign ends with a repetitive final boss and a really rushed ending where they resolve everything in the span of a couple seconds and awkwardly cut to credits. These were kind of funny to watch because of it, like Sonic's ending of Rivals 1 where he saves Amy and was like, "Yeah, I kinda forgot about you," credits. Or Sonic in Rivals 2, where Tails is like, "Maybe we should stop Eggman," and Sonic's just like, "Who cares? We beat the monster, what's he gonna do?" Credits. Rivals 1 offers no last story for completing all 4 of its campaigns, and then Rivals 2 shows 8 total completion tallies, practically begging you to try to do all 8 of them. But to fully play Rivals 2, you only really need to do it 4 times. The difference between, say, Shadow's campaign, the A scenario of the two, and Metal Sonic's campaign, the B scenario, is that if I pick Shadow's story, I'd play as Shadow in Acts 1, 3, and 4, but then I'd play as Metal Sonic in Act 3, and vice versa if I pick Metal Sonic's story. The only extra being that you get 1 additional cutscene in Act 2 at each zone. Also rewarding you with nothing if you do all 8. Except alternate costumes, I guess. At the end of the day, the Rivals series is pretty interesting for me to revisit because, like I said, I played these a lot as a kid, but these are definitely on the list of games that just don't hold up for me. There's a lot of content in these games with different modes and collecting cards based on all kinds of art and characters from Sonic's history, but a lot of that is recycled content in a game that's only really like 50 minutes long. Maybe that would be fine because I think Advance 1 or 3 and Knuckles are fun to revisit with different characters, but here it's just the same mindless gameplay over and over, making it so that both games are just mediocre. But I'd probably rather replay them both over Rush Adventure. Probably not a popular take, but that's just how I felt about it. If you made it this far into the video, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. This is probably going to be the last Sonic video for the next couple months. I mean, the last 5 straight videos have been Sonic related. It's time to give it a rest. But we'll be back with Sonic Riders next time. Like I said, thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you next time.